Let's bring in our political insiders now. Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist, Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist. Guys, we've been talking about this for months on end. It is finally here, the first presidential primary in South Carolina. Democrats going to the polls this weekend, Antoine. Are we expecting any surprises, or does Joe Biden have this wrapped up already?
Well, you never take anything for granted, and you never make any political assumptions until all the votes have been counted. However, I do believe that if all the elements are true that we've been hearing and reading about, Joe Biden will win South Carolina in very handsome fashion. And I think the president will then look forward to the Nevada primaries on Tuesday. And I think for the first time in the history of this country, at least in my lifetime, that the world will get to see on full display why Joe Biden made the political decision and had the political spine and will to make certain that Black voices are heard first in this process. We're picking South Carolina to lead this process off.
It's a really important move, it seems, JR, on the Democratic side, as Antoine said, to turn around and reinforce how important the African-American vote has been. It was here in South Carolina 4 years ago with the support of Jim Clyburn that Joe Biden went from fourth place and fifth place to first place and launched strong into what was going to be Super Tuesday and gaining the nomination. And I think that is a real statement about why this is such an important state, as we said, on both the Democratic and the Republican sides.
Well, on the Republican side, former Governor Nikki Haley campaigning across the state again today, trying to narrow the gap with her and the former president, Donald Trump. Dave, is she successful? Because the polls right now still show Trump with a massive double-digit lead here in South Carolina.
For Nikki Haley to show any level of success, JR, she has got to walk out of South Carolina in less than 10 points away from Donald Trump. Antoine said this before previously. It's been a race for second place. And the reality is, if Donald Trump wins in South Carolina, he gets all 50 of South Carolina's delegates to the national convention, only needs 1,215 to be able to win. So folks at home, this is what this means. It means that Nikki Haley is doing everything she can to garner as much support as she can in the pockets of South Carolina. But even today, JR, you had dozens of elected officials in South Carolina having a rally for Trump on the State House steps. That is a real statement right now that Donald Trump seems to be locking up this nomination in South Carolina, still 3 weeks out from the election.
Look, I saw a poll today indicating the former president has a 27, perhaps 30-point lead above the former governor in the state. I think it's a foregone conclusion. In other words, the cake is already baked. I think Election Day will be a matter of taking it out of the oven for President Trump and the Republican nomination process here in South Carolina. I'm not sure how the former governor proceeds to Super Tuesday and beyond South Carolina. I know that Americans for Prosperity is spending somewhere north of $3.8 million here in the state, even targeting Democrats, asking and suggesting them to vote in the Republican primary, to vote against Donald Trump because Joe Biden is likely going to win South Carolina. I pray that tactic does not work because we need a strong showing in the state. But I think she's pulling out all the stops. And truth be told, I think she's campaigning for life after Trump and setting her marker down. I think she understands that the opportunity for her to be the party's nominee in this election cycle is no longer in existence.
Americans for Prosperity has actually decided that they are going to start looking at other national races on the Senate side. They're looking at 3 major national U.S. Senate races. And that right there says that they're starting to look at the candidacy of Nikki Haley and going, do we diversify our portfolio and recognize the fact that we can possibly elect 3 U.S. senators that will be serving 6-year terms? That is a big statement that was made by the folks who've been putting a lot of money behind Nikki Haley thus far.
There's been a lot of speculation that Nikki Haley is staying in the race because of all the legal woes that the former president is facing, and that perhaps somewhere down the road he will not be on the ballot and Haley would be the go-to candidate for Republicans. Dave, what are you hearing about that?
Right now, every time the president's spoken about is a $22 to $50 million ad buy equivalent, because we're talking about Donald Trump. And when it comes to Donald Trump, we have seen that over and over again since 2016. He is staying in the news. And even if he is in court, there is still the possibility for him to still remain on the ballot and be elected. And I think any level of looking at another alternative at this point in time is a little bit too late, because Donald Trump will have probably had this thing sewn up, had the nomination in place, and the legal battles are going to be part of his strategy moving forward to say, listen, if they're coming after me, they're coming after you. We've been hearing that echo over and over again from Trump and his team as part of their strategy politically with the court battles going on.
It's funny to hear the former president talk about the judicial system being unfair to him because he's being held accountable. It's also funny to hear his supporters talk about a judicial system that's somehow another two-tiered. I'm 38 years old. I'm Black. I'm from rural South Carolina, Swansea to be exact. I've seen this judicial system break for people who look like me and bend for people who look like the former president. At the end of the day, I think the system has to show a sense of accountability for anyone who's done wrong, and there has to be this precedent set that no one is above the law, even a former president.
JR, between New Hampshire and South Carolina, the president had 16 different judicial incidents that are going to be happening, hearings that are going to be taking place, filings that had to be completed. And the thing about it is, Donald Trump's name continues to remain right in the forefront time and time again, day after day after day. And I think that is a whole huge get right now, honestly, for the president, the former president, that is, for him to be able to have the media coverage that he's getting right now.
All right, Dave Wilson, Antoine Seawright, guys, thank you so very much for your time. And of course, the polls will open Saturday for the Democratic presidential primary from 7 to 7, and we'll have complete coverage both on air and online at WLTX.com.